If I touch it, will it stop growing? The voice was melodic, curious, and far too close. Kale cracked an eyelid, gritty with synth sleep residue. Bioluminescent turquoise light pulsed softly, reflecting off the control panel of the rusty comet. Standing inches from his face, peering intently at his morning stubble, was the most impossible creature he'd ever seen outside a black market bioscan. She was tall, impossibly slender, skin shimmering with shifting patterns like oil on water under moonlight, currently a mix of inquisitive turquoise and something warmer, like deep coral. Delicate, fin-like tendrils, edged in silver light, traced the lines of her arms and spine, flaring slightly as she tilted her head. Her eyes were large, black, absorbing the dim cabin light. "Your facial filaments," she elaborated, extending a long finger tipped with a pearlescent claw. "They proliferate in your dormant cycle. Fascinating. Is it nutrient storage?" Kale flinched back, hitting his head on the pilot seat's worn headrest. "Whoa, personal space, lady, and they're called whiskers or stubble, definitely not filaments." He scrambled upright, heart hammering against his ribs. How the hell did she get on his ship? He'd sealed the damn thing tight on Xylos Minor, a grimy outpost where you locked your ship twice and still expected to lose a power conduit. "And who are you?" Alien blinked slowly, the turquoise patterns on her cheeks swirling. "I am Lyra, and your vessel offered accessible shelter." Her voice had a faint, resonant undertone, like a plucked string vibrating just below hearing. She gestured vaguely towards the cargo bay. The atmospheric seal on Container 7 was compromised. Kale's stomach plummeted. Container 7, that held the volatile xenon orchids he was hauling for a shady Zeltronian spice lord. Compromised how? "Did you touch anything?" he demanded, swinging his legs over the side of the bunk grafted awkwardly behind the co-pilot's seat. Lyra's tendrils rippled. The light shifted towards a defensive amber. "Your aggressive vocalization is stimulating. Is this a human greeting ritual?" She took a step back, fluid and graceful, giving him space but still dominating the cramped cockpit. "I merely observed." The container's energy signature was fluctuating erratically, a potential cascade failure. Kale ran a hand through his sleep-matted hair. Cascade failure. Those orchids could turn his ship into a rapidly expanding cloud of very expensive, very illegal purple dust. Okay, don't touch anything else, especially not blinking red lights or hissing containers or me." He pointed a finger at her chest, then thought better of it. Her skin pulsed faintly where he'd almost touched. "Right. How did you get in?" Lyra's gaze drifted towards the main view screen, currently showing the swirling nebulae outside. There was a resonance bypass available on the dorsal hatch relay. Primitive security. Primitive. It had cost him 3 months' profit. "You hacked my ship." "I encouraged it to be more welcoming," she corrected smoothly. The lights on her skin softened back to turquoise and coral. "Your vessel hums with a peculiar loneliness. Does it miss its cohort?" Kale stared at her. Was she talking about his ship's feelings? "It's a freighter, not a puppy. It doesn't miss anything." He pushed past her, trying not to brush against those unnerving, glowing tendrils, and headed for the cargo bay access panel. "Stay here. Do encourage anything else." The airlock hissed open, revealing the dimly lit cargo hold. He scanned the rows of secured containers. 7. It looked intact from here, no obvious leaks, no ominous hissing. But the faint scent of ozone and something else, something floral and alien and sharp, hung in the recycled air. He approached cautiously. As he got closer, he saw it, a fine network of glowing, amber lines spiderwebbing across the container's seal, pulsing faintly. It looked less like damage and more like analysis. Lyra appeared silently beside him, making him jump. "The internal pressure was building unevenly," she murmured, her own light reflecting in the container's metallic surface. "I stabilized the core matrix polarity." She reached out, her long fingers hovering inches from the glowing lines. It required a delicate touch. Kale felt a headache building behind his eyes. A stowaway who hacked his ship and performed unscheduled, probably voiding the warranty maintenance on his dangerous cargo with her alien mojo. Fantastic. "Right, delicate touch, thanks." He backed away. "Now about your unscheduled boarding." Suddenly, a klaxon blared through the ship, the proximity alert. Red lights flashed, bathing the cargo bay in an emergency glow. "Damn it," Kale swore, sprinting back towards the cockpit. "What now?" Lyra flowed after him, her movements impossibly fast. Incoming vessel, she stated calmly, already looking at the sensor readouts Kale hadn't even reached yet. Designation unknown. Weapons signatures active. Kale skidded into the pilot's seat, hands flying across the controls. On the main screen, a sleek black ship, sharp angles and no visible markings, was closing fast. They're not hailing, definitely not friendly. He strapped himself in. Whoever you pissed off, they found you. Lyra settled into the co-pilot's seat, her tendrils flaring with a vibrant, dangerous-looking crimson. Possibly, or perhaps they detected the resonance signature of your orchids. Kale spared her a glare. Less likely, those things are shielded. He slammed his fist on the thruster control. Hang on. This bucket's got a few tricks. The rusty comet lurched, engine screaming in protest as Kale threw it into a sharp evasive dive towards a nearby asteroid field. The black ship followed, losing a volley of energy bolts that sizzled past the cockpit view. Lyra's hand shot out, fingers splaying across a secondary console Kale rarely used. Auxiliary shield modulation, she said, her voice tight. Allow me. Before Kale could object, a wave of complex energy patterns flooded the screen, far more intricate than the standard freighter shields. Her skin glowed fiercely, the light seeming to sync with the energy flow. The ship shuddered as another blast hit, but the shields held, flaring with an unfamiliar golden light. What the hell was that? Kale yelled over the engine whine. Lyra turned to him, a predatory smile touching her lips. The crimson light pulsed along her arms. Just encouraging your ship to be a little less lonely. Her proximity felt electric now, charged with adrenaline and the hum of whatever power she was channeling. He could feel the vibration through the seat, a low thrum that resonated deep in his chest. Forget the orchids, forget the debt. Surviving the next 5 minutes with this glowing, terrifyingly competent alien felt like the only thing that mattered. The asteroid field loomed closer, a chaotic jumble of rock and ice. All right, Sparkles, Kale gritted out, gripping the flight stick. Let's see if your encouragement can handle this. Kale wrestled the comet through the tumbling maze of rock, the pursuing ship hot on their tailpipe. Lyra's hands moved over the shield controls with unnerving speed, her bioluminescence shifting between focused gold and bursts of crimson as energy bolts impacted nearby asteroids, sending shrapnel pinging off their hull. They are persistent, she observed, her tone analytical despite the chaos. Their targeting algorithms are adapting faster than standard pirate tech. Yeah, well, maybe they really want whatever you are, Kale shot back, banking hard around a behemoth chunk of ice. He risked a glance at her. The intense glow had subsided slightly, leaving intricate patterns of sapphire and silver tracing her skin. Even under duress, there was a weird elegance to her, like a predatory bird momentarily distracted by shiny things. What exactly did you do back on Xylos Minor? Steal a governor's prize pet? Ra's lips curved, a hint of amusement in her dark eyes. My departure was necessitated by a difference in biological philosophy. Some find my research methods intrusive. Intrusive how? Kale muttered, yanking the yoke to avoid a collision. Define intrusive. Does it involve resonance bypasses and stabilizing volatile cargo without permission? She didn't answer directly, instead pointing a long finger at the tactical display. Their energy signature, familiar. Corvian syndicate slavers. Kale's blood ran cold. Corvians, not just pirates, they dealt in high-value exotic biologics, living beings, usually ones with unique abilities like, say, glowing on command and messing with ship systems. They're after you, he stated flatly. Great, just great. My life was boring before, but at least it was hunted by slavers boring. Lyra tilted her head, the sapphire light deepening. Is boredom a desirable state for humans? My observations suggested a preference for high-stimulus activities. Yeah, the fun kind, like winning at Sabak or finding a buyer who doesn't try to kill you after the deal. Not this. He gestured wildly at the exploding rocks outside. A larger blast rocked the ship, sending sparks showering from an overhead conduit. The lights flickered. Shields failing, Kale shouted. Engineering is hit. Lyra was already unstrapped, moving towards the back. I can attempt to reroute auxiliary power. Maintain evasive pattern Zeta 9 if possible. Its chaotic oscillations confuse predictive targeting. Kale stared after her. Zeta-9. He barely remembered standard evasive patterns, let alone something that sounded like it came from a theoretical physics textbook. "Just hurry," he yelled, trying to input something vaguely chaotic into the nav computer while manually dodging space junk. The pursuing ship fired again, a more focused beam that sliced through their rear deflector shields like butter. Alarms shrieked. Damage reports flooded the secondary screen. He could feel the heat through the deck plates. He needed Lyra back now. Seconds stretched into an eternity. He risked another glance back. The door to the engineering section was open, spilling flickering emergency lighting. He couldn't see her. Then a low, resonant hum filled the ship, deeper than before, vibrating through the metal, through Kale's bones. The damaged systems flickered, stabilized. The shield icon on his display flared green, then gold again, stronger this time. Lyra reappeared in the doorway, leaning heavily against the frame. Her glow was dimmer, muted lavenders and grays swirling listlessly across her skin. Her tendrils drooped. She looked exhausted. "Power rerouted," she managed, her voice breathy. "But the primary conduits are fused. We cannot sustain this." Kale gritted his teeth. They were out of options. The black ship was maneuvering for a kill shot. Unless... There, he pointed at the nav display. Xantus Prime, jungle world notorious for sensor interference. If we can make atmosphere... Lyra pushed herself upright, moving back to the co-pilot seat with visible effort. "Atmospheric entry will be uncontrolled. The damage, better than controlled disintegration," Kale snapped. He angled the comet towards the swirling green and brown mass of the planet below. "Strap in. This is going to hurt." He poured every last bit of power into the main thrusters, aiming for the thickest part of the ionosphere. The pursuing ship fired one last time, a parting shot that grazed their port engine nacelle. The comet shuddered violently, alarms screaming a final, desperate warning before shorting out. They hit the upper atmosphere like a brick skipping across water. Friction heat turned the viewscreen into a blinding white inferno. Kale fought the controls, trying to keep the ship's nose up, but the damaged engine sent them into a terrifying spiral. Lyra braced herself, her eyes closed, her skin pulsing faintly with that deep, resonant hum as if she were trying to hold the very ship together with sheer will. Metal shrieked. Systems died. The G-forces crushed Kale into his seat, blurring his vision. Trees. Massive, alien trees rushed up to meet them. He yanked back on the controls with everything he had. There was a deafening crunch. A violent, bone-jarring impact that threw him forward against his restraints, and then, blackness. Kale came to with a groan, the coppery taste of blood in his mouth. His head throbbed, and every muscle screamed in protest. The cockpit was a disaster zone, cracked screens, dangling wires, the acrid smell of burnt electronics thick in the air. Outside, the shattered main viewscreen wasn't the black of space, but a riot of impossible green. Giant ferns, pulsating fungal growths, and vines thick as his arm pressed against the transparasteel. They were alive. Somehow. He turned his head, wincing. Lyra was slumped in the co-pilot seat, motionless. Her usual vibrant glow was gone, replaced by a faint, flickering silver like dying embers. Panic seized him. "Lyra, hey, Sparkles, you okay?" He fumbled with his restraint buckle, freeing himself and stumbling over to her side. Her skin felt cool beneath his hesitant touch, the usual warmth absent. Her breathing was shallow. "Lyra," he gently shook her shoulder. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing hazy black irises. She focused on him slowly. "Kale," her voice was a dry whisper. "Report damage." "Ship totaled," he said grimly, scanning her for injuries. No obvious wounds, but the lack of light, the coolness. It felt wrong, deeply wrong. "Forget the ship. Are you hurt?" She tried to sit up, her tendrils twitching weakly. Energy expenditure significant, reserves depleted. She lifted a hand, weakly gesturing towards his forehead. "You are leaking again. Red this time." He touched his forehead, fingers coming away sticky with blood, a minor cut from the impact. "Yeah, well, crashing tends to do that." He looked around the wrecked cockpit, then back at her. Her vulnerability was jarring after her earlier displays of power and confidence. "We need to get out of here, assess the situation." He helped her unbuckle her restraints. She leaned heavily on him as he guided her out of the seat. Her weight was surprising, denser than she looked. Her skin felt strange. Not quite scaled, not quite smooth, with a subtle texture that seemed to shift slightly under his fingers. Even depleted, a faint vibration hummed from her, a low thrum of life. They managed to force the cockpit door open, stepping out into the humid, heavy air of Xantus Prime. The rusty comet had plowed a destructive path through the dense jungle, ending nose down in a shallow, algae-choked stream. Steam hissed from ruptured coolant lines. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, decaying vegetation, and 1,000 alien perfumes, some sweet, some cloying. Towering trees draped in phosphorescent moss formed a dense canopy overhead, filtering the alien sunlight into shifting patterns of green and gold. Strange bird calls echoed through the oppressive humidity. Lyra took a deep, shuddering breath, her silver light flickering slightly brighter. High bioenergy readings, she murmured, scanning the surroundings. Flora, fauna, potent. Yeah, potent enough to eat us if we're not careful, Kale muttered, pulling his trusty blaster pistol from its holster on his thigh. He checked the charge. Full, small mercies. First things first, we need water, maybe salvageable supplies. He looked back at the wreck, and figure out if that slaver ship followed us down. Lyra leaned against the hull, slowly regaining some strength. Their vessel sustained damage, atmospheric pursuit unlikely for now, but they will scan, they will search. She straightened up, her movements becoming more fluid, though the silver light remained dim. The resonance signature I seek, it is strong on this world. Perhaps fate guided us here. Kale raised an eyebrow. Fate, or your knack for attracting trouble, he gestured towards the jungle. Which way, fate? Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, her tendrils quivering slightly. A faint pulse of turquoise light emanated from her, rippling outwards into the jungle air. Kale felt a strange tingling sensation on his skin, like static electricity. The resonance strongest in that direction. She pointed deeper into the tangled wilderness away from the crash site. There is a convergence. Convergence of what? Big nasty predators, Kale grumbled, but he started moving. Staying by the wreck felt like painting a target on their backs. Lyra followed, her bare feet moving almost silently over the mossy ground. Her earlier exhaustion seemed to be fading, replaced by a focused intensity. The jungle pressed in around them, alive and breathing. Strange insects buzzed past, some glowing, some clicking menacingly. Kale kept his blaster ready, his senses on high alert. Lyra moved with a strange grace, occasionally reaching out to touch a glowing fungus or a broad, waxy leaf, her own light flaring faintly in response. This world is ancient, she breathed, her voice regaining some of its resonance. Life here sings. A complex harmony. Sounds more like screeching and buzzing to me, Kale countered, swatting away a large, multi-winged insect that hovered too close. He stumbled over a thick root, catching himself just before he fell. Lyra caught his arm to steady him, her grip surprisingly strong. Her skin was warmer now, the silver giving way to returning hints of turquoise. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through him, not unpleasant. Human locomotion, she observed, her dark eyes studying his momentary lack of balance. Inefficient on uneven terrain. Yeah, well, most of my terrain involves deck plating and artificial gravity, he retorted, pulling his arm free though the tingling warmth lingered. Not this. He gestured at the muddy ground. Lyra tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. The light on her cheeks pulsed with a soft, coral hue that felt suspiciously like amusement. Perhaps you require encouragement. Before he could ask what she meant, she lightly tapped the back of his knee with her foot. It wasn't hard, but it sent a weird, localized buzzing sensation through his leg, making the muscles twitch involuntarily. He stumbled again, catching himself on a low-hanging vine. Hey, cut that out. Lyra's smile widened, the coral light brightening. Your reaction is stimulating. A small neuromuscular jolt enhances proprioception. Helpful, yes. No, not helpful. Kale snapped, though a reluctant grin tugged at his own lips. Just walk, and try not to electrocute me for fun. Her laughter was a soft, melodic chime that echoed strangely in the dense air. The sound, combined with the returning vibrancy of her glow, did something unexpected to the knot of anxiety in his chest. It loosened, just a fraction. Maybe, just maybe, they could survive this, if they didn't kill each other first. The jungle trek was grueling. The humidity clung to Kale like a second skin, sweat plastering his shirt to his back. Every step was a negotiation with tangled roots, sucking mud and grasping vines. Lyra, however, seemed almost energized by the environment. Her bioluminescence had returned to its usual vibrant turquoise and coral, shifting and swirling with her movements. She pointed out edible-looking fungi, which Kale politely declined, identified the screech of distant pack hunters, avoid ridge to the west, and occasionally touched plants that recoiled or pulsed with light at her contact. Her earlier weakness seemed a distant memory. Kale, on the other hand, was flagging. The cut on his forehead throbbed, his muscles ached, and the lack of real food was making him irritable. He tripped again, this time landing hard on his knee against a sharp rock hidden beneath moss. He swore loudly, clutching his leg. "Damn it, stupid planet!" Lyra was beside him instantly, kneeling in the mud. Her usual playful curiosity was replaced by focused concern. The light around her hands intensified, shifting to a pure, healing-associated gold he'd seen her use on the ship's shields. "Allow me." Before he could protest, her cool fingers were probing the torn fabric of his trousers, gently touching the bleeding scrape beneath. A wave of warmth spread from her touch, intense but not painful, sinking deep into the tissue. It felt incredibly strange. Not just heat but a vibration, a resonance that seemed to soothe the raw ache almost instantly. The throbbing subsided. He looked down, fascinated despite himself. Where her fingers rested, his skin seemed to glow faintly in response, a pale echo of her golden light. What are you doing?" he asked, his voice rough. "Minor tissue damage," she murmured, concentrating. Her tendrils flared slightly, catching stray sunbeams filtering through the canopy. Accelerating cellular regeneration via resonant frequency alignment. Standard biosupport. Standard for who? Kale breathed. The sensation was deeply intimate, far more so than just a physical touch. It felt like she was reaching inside him, tuning him like one of her ship consoles. He felt an odd urge to pull away and an equally strong urge to lean into the soothing warmth. He swallowed hard, acutely aware of her proximity, the unique scent of her like ozone and exotic blooms, and the hypnotic shifting of her light. Her focus was absolute, her dark eyes scanning the injury, the golden light pulsing rhythmically. He could see the scrape closing, the bleeding stopping. It was unnerving and undeniably effective. "Your species possesses remarkable resilience," she commented, her fingers still lightly tracing the now smooth skin, but slow, natural healing. "Vulnerable." "We manage," Kale said, his voice tighter than intended. He gently pulled his leg back. The warmth faded, leaving only a faint tingling. "Thanks, I guess." Lyra sat back on her heels, the golden light receding, replaced by inquisitive turquoise. She studied his face intently. "Your pulse rate elevated during the procedure. Your respiration increased. Indicators of stress, or perhaps," her head tilted. "Pleasurable stimulation." Kale felt heat rise in his cheeks. "It's called being weirded out, Sparkles. Having someone zap your knee with golden mojo isn't exactly standard procedure." He scrambled to his feet, trying to regain some semblance of control over the situation. "Can we just focus on finding this convergence of yours before something finds us?" Lyra rose gracefully, the playful coral light flickering back into existence around her eyes. "Of course, though your physiological responses remain data-rich." She started walking again, her pace confident. Kale followed, pointedly ignoring the lingering tingle in his knee and the unwelcome awareness of her touch. They walked in silence for a while, the only sounds the cacophony of the jungle and their own footsteps. The air grew heavier, charged with an almost electric quality. The light filtering through the canopy took on a strange, purplish hue. "We are close," Lyra murmured, her own light intensifying, mirroring the ambient purple. Ahead, through a thick curtain of hanging vines beaded with glowing moisture, Kale could see a clearing. It wasn't natural. Weathered, carved stones, half swallowed by the jungle, hinted at ancient ruins. A low, resonant hum filled the air, similar to the one Lyra generated but deeper, older. Lyra pushed through the vines, her eyes wide with anticipation. Kale followed, blaster raised cautiously. The clearing opened into a crumbling stone amphitheater, centered around a large, bioluminescent plant unlike anything Kale had ever seen. It looked like a colossal, crystalline flower, its petals crafted from solidified light, pulsing with soft waves of purple and gold energy. The air around it vibrated perceptibly. "The heart bloom," Lyra breathed, her voice filled with reverence. She took a step towards it, her own patterns shifting to match the plant's pulsing rhythm. Kale lowered his blaster slightly. Okay, so her convergence was a giant glowy flower. Weird, but maybe not immediately dangerous. Then he heard a rustle in the undergrowth behind them. Not animal, metallic, stealthy. He spun around, blaster up, heart leaping into his throat. Emerging from the dense foliage, their black armor absorbing the strange light, were three figures, Corvian slavers. They raised their pulse rifles. "The asset is located," one said, its voice a harsh, synthesized rasp. "And the bonus human pilot. Secure them both." Lyra whirled, her body instantly shifting into a defensive posture. Her tendrils flared wide, crackling with crimson energy. The air grew thick with tension. "Get behind me, Kale," she commanded, her voice sharp, resonant with power. Caught between the slavers and the giant glowing plant, Kale realized their jungle trek had just led them from the frying pan directly into the bioluminescent fire. Crimson energy crackled around Lyra's hands, her entire form radiating defensive power. The air grew thick, ozone stinging Kale's nostrils. "Stay back," she warned the slavers, her voice resonating with a force that made the leaves on the nearby vines tremble. The lead slaver scoffed, a grating electronic sound. "Resistance is pointless, Xylosian. Your energy signature confirms your value. Cooperate and the human might survive." It raised its rifle. Kale didn't wait. He fired his blaster, a searing bolt of energy striking the slaver's shoulder pauldron. Armor plating smoked and sparked, but the slaver barely flinched, returning fire instantly. Kale dove behind a crumbling stone pillar as pulse rounds stitched the air where he'd been standing. "Nice shot, human," the slaver mocked. "Now you die first." Lyra moved like lightning. A wave of pure kinetic force, visible as a shimmering distortion in the air, slammed into the lead slaver, sending it stumbling back. She flowed between the remaining two, a whirlwind of turquoise light and precise, disabling strikes aimed at joints and weapon arms. Her tendrils lashed out like whips, delivering sharp, bioelectric shocks that made the slavers cry out in synthesized pain. Kale used the distraction, leaning out from behind the pillar and firing targeted shots at the slavers' weapons. He managed to disable one rifle, which clattered onto the mossy stones. But the third slaver anticipated him, swinging its weapon around. A pulse bolt grazed Kale's side, searing through his shirt and sending agonizing pain shooting through his ribs. He gasped, stumbling back, vision blurring. Lyra whirled at his cry, her attention momentarily diverted. It was the opening the lead slaver needed. Recovering quickly, it lunged, tackling Lyra around the waist and slamming her hard against the stone base of the heartbloom. Her light sputtered, shifting to a distressed, flickering gray. She cried out, a sound of pain that cut through the jungle noise. "Lyra!" Kale pushed through the agony in his side, raising his blaster, but the remaining slaver pinned him with suppressing fire, forcing him back behind cover. He watched helplessly as the lead slaver pressed a device against Lyra's neck, a neural dampener. Her glow instantly extinguished, plunging her into silhouette against the heartbloom's light. Her body went limp. "Asset secured," the slaver reported into its comm. Slung the now unconscious Lyra over its shoulder like a sack of grain. "Terminate the human." The second slaver advanced on Kale's position, rifle leveled. Kale was trapped. His side felt like it was on fire, his blaster charge was running low, and they had Lyra. Rage, cold and sharp, cut through the pain. He wasn't going to let them take her. He glanced desperately around. The heartbloom. It pulsed with immense energy, the air around it vibrating intensely. Lyra had called it a convergence. Maybe he burst from behind the pillar, not firing but running straight towards the massive glowing plant. The slaver fired, missing as Kale dodged erratically. He dove, rolling, and slammed his hand against the base of the heartbloom, right where Lyra had impacted. He braced himself, pouring every ounce of desperation, fear, and protective fury he felt for Lyra into that contact. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the heartbloom responded. An overwhelming wave of energy surged up Kale's arm, not painful but immense, ancient, and unbelievably powerful. It felt like plugging directly into a sun. The purple and gold light of the plant flared blindingly bright, expanding outwards in a shockwave of pure resonance. The humming intensified into a deafening roar that shook the very ground. The slavers cried out, disoriented, their electronic systems flickering. The one holding Lyra staggered, dropping her heavily onto the moss. The neural dampener sparked and died, overloaded by the energy surge. Lyra gasped, her own light flaring back to life, a chaotic, unstable storm of colors. The wave hit Kale full force. It wasn't hostile, but it was too much. It felt like being ripped apart and reassembled simultaneously. Memories flashed through his mind, Lyra's curious touch, her playful light, her pained cry. His own loneliness, his fear, his sudden, fierce protectiveness. The energy surged through him, connecting him to the plant, and through the plant to Lyra. He felt her shock, her pain, her returning consciousness, her own resonant energy latching onto his like a lifeline. It was overwhelming, terrifying, and impossibly intimate. Then the wave subsided, leaving Kale shaking, breathless, kneeling at the base of the now slightly dimmer heartbloom. The two conscious slavers were reeling, weapons dropped, clutching their heads. The lead slaver, closest to the blast, lay unconscious. Lyra pushed herself up, her light stabilizing into a fierce, determined crimson. She locked eyes with Kale across the clearing. The raw connection, the shared energy surge still hummed between them, an invisible, vibrating chord. Understanding passed between them, swift and absolute. They had to finish this, together. Kale grabbed the nearest dropped pulse rifle. Lyra surged forward. The fight wasn't over, but the balance had shifted. They were no longer just a pilot and his alien stowaway. They were connected, amplified, and incredibly pissed off. The remaining two slavers, disoriented by the heartbloom's resonant blast, were no match for the combined fury of Kale and Lyra. Kale, despite the searing pain in his side, laid down, covering fire with the captured pulse rifle, forcing the slavers to stay defensive. Lyra moved with blinding speed, her crimson light leaving sharp afterimages in the dim jungle light. She disarmed one slaver with a swift, precise strike, then incapacitated it with a focused bioelectric jolt that sent it crashing unconscious into the undergrowth. The last slaver standing turned, panicked, trying to activate a distress beacon on its wrist gauntlet. Before it could succeed, Kale shot the device, shattering it into sparks. Lyra closed the distance, her hand flashing out, palm connecting with the slaver's chest plate. A concentrated pulse of turquoise energy erupted from her touch, shorting out the slaver's armor systems and sending it collapsing to the ground, momentarily paralyzed. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of damaged electronics, the hum of the heartbloom, and their own ragged breathing. Kale lowered the rifle, leaning heavily against a stone pillar, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. Lyra turned, her crimson glow softening, swirling with gold and turquoise as she looked at him. The connection forged by the heartbloom's energy still thrummed between them, a tangible presence in the air. He could almost feel her relief, her concern mirroring his own. She crossed the clearing quickly, her eyes scanning his injury. "You are damaged," she stated, her voice soft, resonant. "Significantly this time." "Yeah, well," Kale managed a weak grin. "Got tired of you showing off." He swayed, the adrenaline fatting, leaving only exhaustion and pain. Lyra caught him before he fell, supporting his weight easily. Her touch was warm, firm, and sent that familiar, unsettling jolt of awareness through him, magnified now by the lingering resonance. "The energy surge, you initiated it," she murmured, her dark eyes searching his face. "You connected with the heartbloom. How?" "Desperation," Kale suggested weakly. "Seemed like a good idea at the time, didn't like them handling my cargo." Lyra's lips curved slightly. The light on her skin pulsed with a soft coral hue. "I am not cargo, Kale." "Yeah," he breathed, looking into her eyes. "Yeah, I know." The connection between them shifted, deepening beyond the shared energy surge, becoming something warmer, more personal. She guided him to sit on a moss-covered stone ledge, then knelt before him again. This time he didn't resist as her hands, glowing with gentle gold, moved to his injured side. The soothing warmth flowed into him, easing the sharp edges of the pain, knitting torn flesh and muscle. The resonance felt different now, familiar, welcome, achingly intimate. He watched the intricate patterns shift on her skin, mesmerized. "That thing," he gestured towards the heartbloom with his chin. What exactly is it? Lyra kept her focus on his injury but answered softly. It is a nexus, a bioresonant amplifier and repository, ancient. My subspecies, we became disconnected from such nodes long ago. Our resonance weakened, our regenerative abilities faded. We are dying, Kale. Her voice held a profound sadness that resonated through their connection. I was exiled for seeking forbidden knowledge, trying to find a way to reignite our connection. The heart bloom, it holds the key, a specific symbiotic frequency. She finished healing the worst of the damage, leaving the skin smooth and whole, though the deeper ache remained. Her hands lingered on his side for a moment, the golden light fading, replaced by the soft turquoise glow that seemed to signal contemplation. When you touched it. When we touched it, I felt the frequency. Not just within the heart bloom, but within you. Kale stared at her. Me, I'm just a pilot, a human. Human, she repeated, her fingers gently tracing the healed skin, sending shivers down his spine. Your species' energy signature is chaotic, unpredictable, yet you resonated with the nexus. You amplified it, you connected us. She looked up, her dark eyes intense. The symbiosis I sought. Perhaps it is not a plant or a frequency stored in ancient crystal. Her hand moved from his side to his chest, resting lightly over his heart. He could feel the faint vibration of her touch, syncing with his own pulse. Perhaps it is connection itself across species, unlikely, unpredictable. Kale's breath hitched. Her touch, her words, the raw honesty in her eyes, it stripped away his sarcasm, his defenses, leaving him feeling completely exposed. He reached up, his hand hesitant, and brushed his fingers against her cheek. Her skin was incredibly soft beneath the faint, scale-like texture, warm and alive. The turquoise light pulsed brighter at his touch. A small, surprised sound, a soft, resonant hum escaped her lips. "If I touch it," he whispered, echoing her first words to him, his thumb tracing the glowing pattern on her cheekbone, "will it stop growing?" Lyra leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. The light on her skin shifted to a deep, warm coral, swirling with contented gold. "No," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. "It will only grow brighter." He saw it then, the loneliness he recognized so well mirrored in her, hidden beneath the confidence and the alienness. The exile, the desperate search, the fear of fading away. And he knew with sudden, absolute certainty that he wasn't letting her face it alone. His ship was gone, his old life was ashes, but looking at Lyra, feeling the impossible connection humming between them, he didn't feel loss. He felt found. He leaned forward, drawn by an invisible force, by the resonance that now felt like a part of him, and gently pressed his lips against hers. Her lips were soft, warm, and tasted faintly of ozone and the jungle air. A jolt, stronger than any bioelectric shock, shot through him. Lyra stiffened for a fraction of a second, surprised, then melted into the kiss, her own resonance surging, flooding him with warmth, curiosity, and a wave of emotion so profound it stole his breath. Her tendrils curled instinctively, brushing against his back, sending shivers of pure sensation across his skin. The kiss was tentative at first, an exploration of alien softness and human pressure, then deepened quickly, fueled by the adrenaline of the fight, the release of tension, and the undeniable pull that had been building between them since she first appeared in his cockpit. She made a soft sound against his mouth, a low, resonant hum of pleasure that vibrated through his entire body. Her hands came up to cup his face, her thumbs tracing his cheekbones, her touch sending sparks across his skin. The light patterns on her hands shifted rapidly, gold, coral, turquoise, even flashes of crimson, mirroring the complex flood of sensations and emotions pouring through their connection. He pulled back slightly, breathless, resting his forehead against hers. Her skin pulsed with soft light against his. "So," he managed, his voice husky. "Resonance frequency alignment, is that what this is?" Lyra's eyes fluttered open, dark pools reflecting the ambient jungle light and his own face. A slow, genuine smile spread across her features, transforming her. "Among other things," she whispered, her own breath warm against his lips, "human contact requires further study." "Yeah," Kale grinned, feeling lighter than he had in years despite the ache in his side and the 3 unconscious slavers nearby. "I'm willing to participate in the research." He leaned in to kiss her again, deeper this time, losing himself in the warmth, the light, the impossible reality of her. Around them, the heartbloom pulsed gently, a silent witness, its ancient energy resonating with the new, fragile connection forged in chaos and unexpected tenderness. The jungle held its breath, acknowledging the shift, the unlikely bond between a lonely human pilot and an exiled alien healer, finding their frequency amidst the ruins. They dealt with the slavers methodically, using their own binders and neural stunners to ensure they wouldn't be waking up anytime soon. Kale salvaged what he could from their gear, power cells, a medkit far superior to his own depleted one, nutrient-paced rations that tasted like despair but would keep them alive. Lyra, meanwhile, approached the heartbloom with quiet reverence. She placed her hands gently on its crystalline surface, her eyes closed, her own light pulsing in sync with the plant's deep purple and gold rhythm. Kale watched her, the intimate connection they'd forged still humming beneath his skin. He could feel her focus, a sense of communion that went far beyond simple observation. After several minutes, she drew back, a thoughtful expression on her face. "The nexus is depleted," she said, turning to him. "Our interaction, the defensive surge. It drew heavily on its stored energy. It will take time to recover." "Did you get what you needed?" Kale asked, securing a salvaged power cell to his belt. "The frequency, the key to saving your people." Lyra looked at him, her gaze deep and searching. The light on her skin softened to a gentle blend of turquoise and silver. "I received understanding. The resonance isn't a simple frequency to be captured or replicated. It's generated, Kale, generated through connection. Through shared energy, shared experience, shared vulnerability." She gestured between them. "What happened here, it was a demonstration, an echo of what my people have lost." A wave of empathy flowed from her through their bond, tinged with the sorrow of her long search possibly being fruitless in the way she'd imagined. "So the heartbloom itself isn't the cure," Kale surmised, stepping closer to her. "It's more like a teacher, perhaps, or a catalyst." Lyra reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek again, a touch that now felt both familiar and electrically charged. "The slavers called me an asset. They hunt others like me, those with resonant abilities scattered across the galaxy. They drain us, exploit our energy." Her eyes hardened. "They represent the disconnection I fight against." Kale covered her hand with his own, feeling the gentle thrum of her energy. "Then we fight them." It wasn't a question. His path was clear now. The rusty comet was scrap, his old life a memory. Staying with Lyra, helping her, protecting her, it felt like the only thing that mattered. It felt right. Lyra searched his face, her bioluminescence pulsing softly. "You would do this, forsake your own path for mine, for a species not your own." "My path kind of blew up on atmospheric entry," Kale said with a wry twist of his lips. "Besides," he added, his voice softening, his gaze holding hers, "feels like our paths converge back there anyway." He nodded towards the heartbloom. "Resonance frequency alignment, remember." A slow smile touched Lyra's lips, genuine and warm. The coral light flared brightly on her cheeks. "I remember." She leaned into him slightly, the gesture trusting, intimate. "The slavers will have a base, likely orbital or on a nearby moon. They will have records, information on others they hunt. And maybe tech we can borrow," Kale added, already thinking like a scavenger again, but this time with a purpose beyond mere survival. "A ship maybe." "A possibility," Lyra agreed. "But confronting them directly, it will be dangerous. More dangerous than crashing on a jungle planet and fighting slavers with a giant glowy flower." Kale raised an eyebrow. "Sounds like Tuesday." Lyra's soft, chiming laughter echoed in the clearing. She rested her head against his shoulder for a moment, a gesture of surprising vulnerability. He could feel the fine tremor of her tendrils against his back, a sign of emotion she wasn't broadcasting through light alone. He wrapped an arm around her waist, holding her close, breathing in her unique scent. They stood there for a long moment, cocooned in the relative peace of the ruins, the jungle sounds a distant backdrop to the quiet hum of their connection. The future was uncertain, dangerous, but for the first time in a long time, Kale didn't feel alone in facing it. He had Lyra, and she, it seemed, had him. "We should find better shelter before nightfall," Kale said finally, reluctantly breaking the embrace. "This place feels exposed." Lyra nodded, stepping back, though her eyes lingered on his. There are caves north of here indicated by subterranean water resonance. They should offer concealment. They gathered the salvaged supplies. Before leaving the clearing, Lyra paused, placing a hand once more on the heart bloom. Kale felt a wave of gratitude flow from her towards the ancient nexus. Then she turned, her gaze clear and determined. "Let's go," she said. They walked side by side, leaving the unconscious slavers and the dimming heartbloom behind them, plunging back into the vibrant, dangerous embrace of Xantus Prime. The path ahead was unknown, filled with peril, but the resonance between them was a steady, guiding light, a silent promise of shared strength and a future forged together. Kale glanced at Lyra, the intricate patterns on her skin shifting in the dappled sunlight. He still didn't understand half of what she was, but he knew, deep in his bones, that he wanted to find out. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers. She interlaced her long, cool fingers with his without hesitation, her touch sending a familiar, pleasant jolt through him. The turquoise light on her hand pulsed softly, a silent affirmation. Yeah, Kale thought, a small smile touching his lips. This was definitely better than Tuesday. The caves Lyra sensed were a network of limestone passages carved by millennia of subterranean rivers, hidden behind a curtain of thick, mossy vines. The air inside was cool and damp, carrying the clean scent of minerals and water. Deeper within, phosphorescent fungi clung to the walls, casting an ethereal blue-green light that reminded Kale of Lyra's own calmer hues. It felt safe, secluded. They chose a relatively dry chamber, large enough to move around in but small enough to defend. Kale set about making a small, contained fire using a salvaged plasma lighter and dry fungus scrapings, more for psychological comfort and boiling water than warmth. Lyra explored the chamber's edges, her fingers trailing along the rock walls, occasionally pausing as if listening to something Kale couldn't hear. "The water source is close," she confirmed, returning to the firelight. "And the rock here, it dampens external resonance. We should be difficult to detect." She settled near the fire, opposite Kale, tucking her legs beneath her gracefully. The firelight flickered across her features, casting her usual glow into sharper relief. The silence stretched between them, comfortable now, filled only by the crackle of the fire and the distant drip of water. Kale took out 2 nutrient-paced rations. "Dinner is served," he announced dryly, offering her one. Lyra eyed the gray tube with suspicion. Its energy signature is bland and slightly depressing. "Welcome to survival rations," Kale said, squeezing some of the paste onto his finger and tasting it. He grimaced. "Okay, mostly depressing, but it's calories." Lyra hesitantly accepted the tube, mimicking Kale by squeezing a small amount onto her fingertip. She touched it delicately with her tongue, her nose wrinkling slightly. The light on her skin flickered with a faint, distasteful yellow-green. Texture, suboptimal. Nutrient profile, adequate barely. She looked at Kale, a hint of mischief in her eyes. "Human sustenance is often disappointing." "Hey, you haven't tried bantha steak drizzled with Corellian whiskey reduction," Kale protested. "Or hot synth noodle soup on a cold station orbit. Some of it's good. Perhaps you will demonstrate these superior options when we acquire a vessel with adequate galley facilities," Lyra suggested, taking another small, dutiful taste of the paste. "Deal," Kale agreed easily. The thought of a future, of shared meals on a ship that wasn't currently scrap metal, felt surprisingly real, surprisingly desirable. They ate in silence for a few moments, the shared, mundane act feeling strangely intimate after the chaos and intensity of the day. Kale found himself watching the way the firelight played on her skin, the subtle shifts in light that accompanied her thoughts, her reactions. He was learning to read her slowly, decoding the language of her light and resonance. He finished his ration and tossed the empty tube aside. Lyra was still slowly consuming hers, as if analyzing every molecule. He noticed the weariness in her posture, the slight dimming of her overall glow now that the adrenaline had faded completely. The healing she'd performed on him, the fight, the energy surge, it had all taken a toll. "You're exhausted," he said softly. Lyra looked up, meeting his gaze. She didn't deny it. The energy expenditure was considerable. Replenishment requires rest and resonant stability. She paused, her gaze dropping slightly. "Proximity to a compatible resonant field is most effective." The implication hung in the air, proximity to him. The connection they shared wasn't just emotional or psychic, it seemed to have a tangible, physical component for her, tied to her species' energy needs. Cale felt a flush creep up his neck. Right, compatible field, gotcha. He shifted awkwardly. So, sleeping arrangements. Lyra tilted her head, a faint shimmer of amusement crossing her features. Human pair bonding rituals often involve shared dormant cycles in close proximity, yes. Something like that, Cale mumbled, feeling ridiculously inexperienced despite his years knocking around the galaxy. Dealing with engine failures was easy compared to navigating this. Lyra set aside her half-finished nutrient paste. My energy levels are low, Cale. Close contact will facilitate faster recovery. Her tone was practical, almost clinical, but her eyes held a deeper warmth and invitation. If you are amenable, Cale's heart gave a distinct thump. Amenable, he was more than amenable. He was terrified and thrilled and utterly lost in the dark pools of her eyes. He cleared his throat. Yeah, okay, close contact for resonant stability. He gestured to the smoothest patch of cave floor near the fire. We can, share the spot. Lyra rose and came towards him, her movements fluid even in her fatigue. She settled beside him, close enough that he could feel the faint warmth radiating from her skin, smell the ozone and bloom scent that was uniquely hers. Her tendrils brushed lightly against his arm as she shifted position. He held his breath, unsure of the protocol. Did they just lie down? She seemed to sense his uncertainty. A soft coral light pulsed on her cheek. Physical contact enhances the energy transfer, she explained softly, her voice a low murmur. She tentatively reached out, her cool fingers brushing against his hand. He met her touch, lacing his fingers through hers. The connection flared, a gentle warmth flowing between them, instantly soothing something deep inside him he hadn't even realized was tense. It felt like coming home, though he'd never experienced anything like it before. Encouraged, Lyra leaned closer, resting her head lightly against his shoulder, much as she had in the clearing. Her tendrils curled slightly around his arm, a soft, trusting weight. Her breathing deepened almost immediately, the rhythmic rise and fall of her shoulders a calming presence beside him. Her light softened further, settling into a gentle, pulsing rhythm of turquoise and silver, like distant starlight. Cale sat stiffly for a moment, overwhelmed by the simple intimacy of the contact, the implicit trust she placed in him. He slowly relaxed, leaning his head back against the cave wall, her hair fine, silky strands that weren't quite hair brushing against his cheek. He could feel the low, steady hum of her resonance, syncing with his own heartbeat, lulling him towards sleep. This alien woman who had crashed into his life bringing chaos and danger, now felt like the calmest, safest harbor he'd ever known. He closed his eyes, listening to her soft breathing, feeling the steady pulse of her light against his skin, and drifted off to sleep, not alone in the dark. Cale woke slowly, disoriented. For a moment he thought he was back on the comet, the low hum of engines in his ears. But the air was cool and damp, smelling of earth, and the light was a soft, ethereal blue-green from the cave fungi. The humming wasn't engines, it was deeper, more organic. It was coming from Lyra. She was curled against his side, still asleep, her head pillowed on his chest. One of her arms was draped across his waist, her hand resting lightly on his hip. Her tendrils were relaxed, occasionally twitching in her sleep like a dreaming cat's tail. Her bioluminescence was a steady, deep turquoise, pulsing with a slow, contented rhythm. The low, resonant hum vibrated gently through his body where they touched, a soothing thrum that felt incredibly peaceful. He lay still, careful not to wake her, just watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, the soft light playing across her alien features. She looked younger in sleep, vulnerable, the fierce warrior and the pragmatic scientist momentarily absent. He felt a surge of protectiveness so strong it caught him off guard. He carefully shifted his arm, draping it loosely over her shoulders, pulling her slightly closer. She murmured in her sleep, a soft, melodic sound, and snuggled deeper against him, the resonant hum intensifying slightly, washing over him in waves of calm. He could feel her energy levels, stronger now, replenished by the rest and their proximity. The connection between them felt clearer in the quiet morning light, a tangible bond woven from shared danger, unexpected intimacy, and that strange resonance he still didn't fully understand. He knew they needed to move, to plan, to figure out how to find the slaver base and free others like her. But just for a moment he wanted to stay here in this quiet cave, holding her, feeling the simple peace of not being alone. Lyra stirred, her eyelids fluttering. She stretched languidly, her tendrils flaring slightly before settling. Her dark eyes opened, focusing on his face inches away. There was no confusion, no surprise, only a soft recognition, a warmth that mirrored what he felt. "Good, dormant cycle," she murmured, her voice husky with sleep. "Yeah," Cale answered softly. "Best I've had in a long time." He hesitated, then brushed a stray strand of her dark, silky hair back from her forehead. "You seem brighter." Lyra smiled, a slow, sleepy curve of her lips. The turquoise light on her skin intensified, swirling with hints of coral. "Resonant stability achieved. Your proximity is highly effective." Her hand tightened slightly on his hip, a possessive, unconscious gesture that sent a pleasant jolt through him. "Glad I could help," he said, his voice rougher than intended. They lay there for another long moment, simply looking at each other, the connection humming between them, charged with the unspoken possibilities of the morning. The memory of their kiss in the clearing, the feel of her resonance flooding him, the simple comfort of sleeping beside her, it all coalesced into a powerful certainty. This wasn't just a temporary alliance born of survival. It was something more. Lyra shifted, propping herself up on an elbow, looking down at him. Her expression turned serious, though the underlying warmth remained. "Cale, about the slavers, about finding the others." "I'm in," he said immediately before she could finish. "Whatever it takes." Her eyes searched his. "This path will not be easy. The Corvian Syndicate is powerful, ruthless. They guard their secrets, their assets closely." "So were the guys who own my ship," Cale countered. "I'm good at navigating tricky situations and acquiring things that aren't strictly mine." Lyra's lips twitched. "Your skill set appears uniquely suited to our current predicament." She traced a finger along his jawline, her touch light but electric. "But it is my fight, my people. You do not have to." "I want to," he interrupted gently but firmly. He reached up, cupping her cheek, feeling the soft pulse of light beneath his palm. "You're not cargo, remember. You're Lyra, and I'm not leaving you to face this alone." Emotion flared in her eyes, a complex mix of gratitude, surprise, and something deeper, fiercer. The light on her skin surged, gold and crimson mixing with the turquoise. She leaned down, pressing her forehead against his, the resonant hum intensifying, creating a closed circuit of shared feeling between them. "Thank you, Cale," she whispered, the vibration of her voice traveling through his bones. They stayed like that, connected, absorbing the weight of the decision, the reality of the path they were choosing together. Then practical matters intruded. A rumble echoed from Cale's stomach. Lyra pulled back slightly, a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "Your internal systems require fuel," Cale grinned. "Yeah, my nutrient processor is complaining. Guess it's time for more delicious gray paste." They reluctantly untangled themselves, the separation leaving a faint sense of loss, quickly replaced by the shared purpose tingling in the air. As Cale rekindled the fire and Lyra went to fetch fresh water from the subterranean stream, he watched her go, admiring the fluid grace of her movements, the quiet confidence that had returned with her strength. His life had taken a sharp, unexpected turn into territory far stranger and more dangerous than he could have imagined. But looking at Lyra, feeling the unbreakable thread of connection between them, he wouldn't have changed a thing. This was where he was meant to be. Their journey was just beginning. Their first priority was information. Lyra believed the slavers likely operated from a mobile platform or a hidden base within the Xantus system, coordinating hunts on the planet below. Cale's technical knowledge combined with Lyra's ability to sense energy signatures gave them a unique edge. They spent the day carefully scavenging the remaining tech from the unconscious slavers, Cale bypassing security locks, while Lyra analyzed energy patterns on salvaged datapads. "Their communication logs are heavily encrypted," Cale muttered, frowning at a flickering screen jury-rigged to a slaver power cell. "Standard Corvian military grade, tough nut to crack." Lyra placed her hand over his on the datapad. A faint golden light flowed from her fingers, interacting with the device's circuits. Cale felt the familiar resonance tingle up his arm. On the screen, complex algorithmic barriers seemed to shimmer and dissolve. Encrypted files began rapidly decrypting. "Whoa," Cale breathed. "Remind me never to play poker against you." Lyra tilted her head, the golden light fading. "Is poker a game involving probabilistic deception?" "Something like that," Cale confirmed, quickly scanning the revealed data. "Ship manifests, patrol routes, here we go. An orbital transfer station disguised as a derelict asteroid mining facility. Processing Center Gamma 7. Sounds cozy." "Processing." Lyra's voice hardened, her light shifting to a colder silver. "That is where they take them, where they condition them, break their resonance." The bond between them pulsed with her anger and pain. Cale reached out, resting his hand on her shoulder. "We'll find it, Lyra. We'll hit them where it hurts." She looked at him, drawing strength from his touch, her resolve hardening. "Yes, we will." The decrypted logs gave them coordinates for the station, but getting there was another problem. They were planet-bound, shipless. Their best bet was to find a settlement, an outpost, somewhere on Xantus Prime where Cale could trade, borrow, or acquire transport. Patrol routes suggested a small, independent trading post several days' trek south, nestled in a relatively stable river valley. It was risky, Corvian patrols occasionally swept the area, but it was their only real option. The trek south was different from their initial desperate flight through the jungle. They moved with purpose, working as a team. Cale handled navigation, using salvaged scanners and his own ingrained sense of direction. Lyra used her resonance to scout ahead, detecting potential dangers, predator packs, unstable terrain, Corvian drone patrols, long before Cale's tech picked them up. Their banter became easier, more familiar. Cale learned Lyra had a dry, unexpected sense of humor, often delivered with a deadpan expression that made her playful light shifts even funnier. Lyra, in turn, seemed endlessly fascinated by human idioms and emotional complexities, often asking Cale to explain sarcasm or illogical bursts of anger, her head tilted in genuine curiosity. Evenings were spent huddled by a small fire, sharing rations, still depressing, but less so when shared, talking about their pasts. Cale spoke hesitantly about his solitary years drifting between systems, the betrayals that had made him guard his independence so fiercely. Lyra shared more about her people's fading resonance, her forbidden research, the grief of her exile, and her desperate hope of finding a way to reignite their connection, a hope now tentatively pinned on understanding the bond she shared with Cale. One evening, as Lyra described the intricate beauty of Zalosian resonance songs, complex harmonies woven from light, sound, and shared emotion, Cale felt a pang of sadness for the culture she missed. "Sounds incredible," he said softly. Lyra looked at the fire, her light a subdued lavender. It was. Sharing resonance was like breathing the same air, feeling the same heartbeat across a whole community. Now only faint echoes remained for most. She turned to him, her dark eyes luminous. "What we feel, Cale, this connection, it is the barest whisper of what my people once shared freely. And yet," her fingers brushed his, sending a jolt of warmth through him, "it feels like the loudest song I have ever known." He squeezed her hand, unable to find words adequate for the depth of emotion he felt radiating from her. In that moment, his commitment solidified. This wasn't just about stopping slavers. It was about helping Lyra reclaim a lost part of her soul, her heritage. On the fourth day, they reached the edge of the river valley. Below them lay the outpost, a motley collection of prefabricated domes and tents clustered around a muddy landing pad, smoke curling from a few chimneys. It looked rough, temporary, exactly the kind of fringe settlement Cale was used to dealing with. "All right," Cale said, scanning the area with macrobinoculars. "Looks like our kind of dump. Smugglers, scavengers, maybe a few legit traders trying to keep their noses clean. Should be able to find passage off-world, or at least the parts to make something flyable out of that slaver wreckage back north." Lyra scanned the outpost with her own senses, her tendrils quivering slightly. Multiple energy signatures, mostly civilian vessels. One older model freighter, its resonance feels familiar. Cale frowned. "Familiar how?" "Like your vessel," she clarified. "Lonely but functional." He lowered the binoculars, a slow grin spreading across his face. A lonely freighter. Maybe fate owed him one after all. Okay, new plan. Forget booking passage. Let's go see about adopting a lonely ship. Lyra's lips curved in an answering smile, her light flaring with anticipation, encouraging it to be more welcoming. Exactly, Cale confirmed, slinging the salvaged rifle over his shoulder. Let's go introduce ourselves. They started down the slope towards the outpost, side by side, partners ready to face the next challenge. Their shared purpose a silent hum between them, brighter and stronger than ever. Their fight was far from over, but together they felt unstoppable.